Welcome to Crying Out Cloud, the podcast that will make you laugh, cry, and reconsider all of your cloud security fears. I'm Eden from the CTO team at Wiz, and I'm here with my amazing co-host, Amitai.
Hello.
Research team. And today we are really excited to welcome our special guest, Valentina Palmiotti, aka Chompie. She is a hacker and computer security researcher who focuses on low-level vulnerabilities, exploit development, and offensive security. She currently works for IBM X-Force. Hi, Valentina.
Hi, so great to be here.
We're so excited you're here. Do you prefer to be called Valentina or Chompie?
I respond to both. Whatever is easiest. I don't have a preference.
Cool. Both fabulous names.
Thank you.
Well, we're grateful to have you on and to share your depth of knowledge and hopefully some crazy stories from out in the cyber wild. All right. So we thought to get started, we would do a little speed round of questions to get to know you a little bit before we jumped in deeper. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. For starters, how did you choose the hacker named Chompie?
Or was it chosen for you?
It was not. Honestly, there's two stories I tell. One that's kind of like a retroactive explanation, which is that a chomp is 16 bits on certain computers. But really, it was just some username that I came up with off the top of my head, like posting as a kid on like forums and stuff. And there was no real like thought behind it other than I thought it was kind of cute. And then I started working for this job and they were like, well, we don't use our real names here. We all like just call each other by our handles. So what's your handle? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I use this handle Chompie. And so that's what I told them. And then once I started doing public research and made a GitHub and a Twitter handle, I just stick with that. It's Chompie. So not an exciting story, but it does have like a computer explanation. And sometimes people are satisfied with that one.
It's cool. We're big fans. Wait, where are you calling us from today? Where are you based?
I'm based in the US. I'm in Boston, in the East Coast, but I'm from Chicago.
And when you're hacking, what's your go-to playlist? What do you like to listen to?
I like really upbeat, energetic types of music. So it can be anything from, like high energy pop. I love Spanish music. I love reggaeton. I love like heavy metal, even electronic music, anything with a high BPM, and that just keeps high energy is what motivates me to keep going. I like high energy music.
Are you a Mac, Windows, Linux, or typewriter kind of gal?
I use all three. Different OSs for different jobs, but I really do love Apple products. But I use all three for different jobs. So there's definitely things that are easier to do on Windows. There's definitely things that I wouldn't think to attempt on Windows or Mac computers and have to be on Linux. If you ask me what I prefer to do if I wasn't in tech or if I didn't have the job of security researcher, I probably would just use Mac or like Apple products all the time.
Okay. So we hear, for listeners who are not familiar, that you're an honorary Burger King spokesperson. So what's your order at Burger King and what's the story behind the whole Burger King?
My order at Burger King is always the same. I get a Whopper with cheese, and with fries, sometimes onion rings, and a Dr. Pepper. The story, there's not really much of a story. I'm your typical American, I consume a lot of fast food, sadly. Long nights hacking, long stretches of hacking. Sometimes you don't get to cook yourself your own meal. And so I like to just try different fast food items when I'm traveling. I've been traveling a lot this year. I always make it a point to go try the local fast food and just try the different menu items that are on that are exclusive for that country. And so I used to be a big McDonald's person, but I feel like McDonald's has fallen off in the last few years, especially with the price. It's really expensive, and Burger King has just provided, really good deals. They have the 2 for $5 Whopper. Can't go wrong. And I've become partial to it. So my friend, one day we went and met up to hang out, and she saw that I had a coffee cup of iced coffee from Burger King. And normally when you see people walking around with their iced coffee, it's from Starbucks or from Dunkin' Donuts or somewhere known from their coffee. But mine was from Burger King because I had eaten Burger King earlier. And she's like, oh my God, you're 100% have to be a Burger King ambassador. So that's the story behind that.
We were curious. We were intrigued. Okay. What's your favorite conference and why is it probably Hexacon?
Oh my gosh, that's so hard. I feel like this is a good time to shout out my hometown because I think ThoughtCon, which is in Chicago, it's the biggest hacking conference that's in Chicago, is really, really cool and really, really good. And it's pretty inexpensive to attend, and it has very underground, it's very technical. Everybody there is chill and you get the full experience. The tickets doesn't cost several $1,000s. And there's I feel like you're immediately accepted into the community. It was one of I think the first, or at least, yeah, one of the first InfoSec conferences that I had ever attended. And I got very hacker vibes. Everybody was immediately accepting. But the technical content was great as well. Hexacon is also amazing. Everybody should attend. I'm unfortunately not going this year because I'm getting married on the same day. But
that's exciting.
Thank you. But I'll definitely be there next year. I'm part of the review board.
Your anniversary party will be a Hexacon.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Not a bad place to celebrate in Paris. But yeah, a Hexacon is explicitly for offensive security, which is great because that's where my specific interests lie, and you get offensive security talks from all over the board, every platform, operating system. And I think the review board does a really good job at evenly distributing the subject of the talks, and everybody involved with selecting the talks, I think, is very critical in a good way, just to bring forth the best content. So I'm really excited about that.
Amazing. I'm telling maybe we'll go next year.
Yeah, ThoughtCon also sounds interesting. I think we'll put a link in the description.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about ThoughtCon is that the location is secret every year, so that kind of adds to the.
That's so cool.
vibe.
Wait, but
Yeah.
until what point? You have to know.
They can't get there. It'll be
Yeah, I think attendees do get a heads up, but it's secret until then, until the attendees know.
Oh, mysterious.
Yeah.
Very cool. And how did you first get into information security? What brought you down this whole path?
So basically what happened was I had a previous career before this. I was working in economic research, macroeconomic research, and I was really unhappy. I had kind of gotten into it with the idea that I really liked math and mathematical models, but I also liked the social science aspect, mathematically modeling human behavior. And so how can we quantitatively explain people's motivations, rationale, and intentions, and then model this, the money market based on people's behavior. And I kind of became disillusioned once I started working for the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, and their research department. And I just became disillusioned with the whole process and kind of realized that like the glean and the explanation of what type of research was happening didn't explain the reality of what was coming out. And I was really young then. I was a newly graduated from college. And it just so happened at the time, backing up a little bit, I was always into computers. I wasn't a coder or did any hacking when I was 12 or anything, which is like the typical story of like, I taught myself how to hack when I was 8 years old. That's definitely not what happened. But I considered myself to be pretty technically savvy. I got a computer when I was like super young, and the internet was still relatively new. So I was around. I knew that it was cool. Did some things here and there. So computer security was always an area of allure because it's like, well, hacking is cool, right? Hacking has this kind of like glamorous sheen to it. And it's like, I think I would like to do that. And I'm from Chicago, I mentioned earlier. So I was living in Chicago at the time. And basically what happened was I was just researching, how do I become a hacker? Like, what's that all about? I think this thing that I'm doing right now is not working out. And at the time, there was, and still is, every other day, there's a media story about the cybersecurity talent gap and how there's all of these open jobs for people to join cybersecurity, and we just don't have enough people trained. So the mayor of my city, Chicago, had taken some leftover tax rebate money or something and funded a program to train people to work in cybersecurity, along with some money that was contributed with the DoD. And so they funded this program, and they had a press release, and they opened applications for people that were interested. And just so happened at the same time that I was looking, this program was accepting applications for like a month. And I was like, okay, perfect. This is what's going to happen. I put in my application. I was accepted.
Like perfectly aligned.
Yeah. It was a celestial moment. I don't know how or why, but if there's something otherworldly out there, that's what happened, because I got accepted. It was very competitive. They told us, they made it seem like it was more accessible, but we had to go to an information meeting where it was like, this is going to be really highly stressful. You're going to have to be able to deal with high stress environments and all this stuff. And it was half military too. So you guys, like being Israeli based, super familiar with it, but us and in the US as civilians, like not associated with military at all, it was kind of weird. Just showing up, and then half of the classroom is like in uniforms and stuff. It's kind of strange.
They didn't give you like cool hacker suits to wear?
No. Yeah, so it was that kind of vibe, and we were trained, in a very like military type fashion. And it was 6 months full time. We couldn't have a job. We weren't paid either. So I kind of ran through my savings and depended on my parents to help me out for that little bit, which I'm super thankful to them for them doing that and believing in me. And then a couple months before the training was due to end, the company that did the training, which actually it was like a contractor. They were like, hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you, like, after this is all over, do you think you want to come work for us? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I got kind of like a really lucky break, because it's not usually that easy.
So since that happened, you went on to do a bunch of really interesting work in this world. I know you recently were looking into like kernel vulnerabilities. About a year ago, you were looking into like a security review of Firecracker, which was used against AWS Lambda, and a whole array of things. How do you choose what to research? Like, what draws you to new projects?
So anything that lets like unprivileged users on a machine interact directly with the kernel or like pass input directly with the kernel, is probably going to be a prime target for privilege escalation vulnerabilities, because especially when you're looking at complex like system call interfaces like IO ring or eBPF, there are bound to be some mistakes made there from trusting unprivileged input. And also I look for complexity. So if things look super complex, using or parsing unprivileged input, then I take a look. But also just things that like seem unusual or unexplored, especially new attack surfaces that haven't had many vulnerabilities, are good candidates. Like, for example, I was talking about Patch Tuesday earlier. There was a vulnerability that I just reported in the Microsoft kernel streaming server. And the reason why I decided to look at that was because there was one vulnerability that I saw reported, which was, I think, the only one up until, I think it was patch in June. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I've never heard of this attack surface. Let me take a look. And I was able to actually identify a few vulnerabilities in there right off the bat. And I always am in favor of easy wins. And that kind of had all of my criteria. So like somewhat complex processing, although it's a small code base, direct interaction with the kernel, new attack surface that hasn't been really audited, or at least publicly, and kind of unusual stuff that I hadn't seen before.
Is the complexity aspect because it increases the likelihood of someone making a mistake, like during development?
Yes, absolutely. There are just so many things, especially when you're coding in a low level language like C or C++, that can be overlooked. And there are some vulnerabilities that I've found only after staring at a code base for months. And then after I found them, like, this should have been entirely obvious, but it's not. So it's so easy to make a mistake. And the more complex the operations and the processing, the more likely you are to have made a mistake or overlooked something.
Okay, so one of our friends from the Wiz research team was at your talk at Blackhat. He came back and told us it was really great. And I know that amidst other things, you spoke about what attackers are doing on Windows machines once they exploit kernel vulnerabilities. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about what you talked about and kind of share the research that went on there?
Sure. So what we talked about at Blackhat USA last month is a variety of kernel post-exploitation techniques that attackers and our team leverage after the post-exploitation scenario. So I think there's a lot of controversy in whether admin to kernel is really a security boundary. So a lot of people will say, well, these post-exploitation things aren't really important because they require admin access for you to, load a vulnerable driver, for you to do any of these things. Well, you're already owned if they have admin. And sure, that it's, I'm not here to debate one or the other. Sure. But our argument is that if that were true, then we wouldn't care about driver signing, for example. Mm-hmm. So if admin to kernel is so important, then why are we monitoring what kernel modules are loaded? Why do they need a certificate if that is not actually a boundary? So by showing, we had a full chain, 0 day to admin to driving, loading a vulnerable driver and doing all this kernel post-exploitation things. And we showed how exactly you can manipulate and cover your tracks. So it makes things like exploitation detection, network detection, data exfil a lot easier and super easy to cover your tracks. And our argument is like, well, that's what nation states are doing. This is our research. These are our techniques. And defenders should be aware that this is happening. And instead of discarding of like, well, they already have admin. Well, you know, kernel vulnerabilities, especially in Windows, there's plenty to go around. Even end-day, you know, exploitation is super easy. We presented a case study example of me and my colleague reverse engineering and writing an exploit for an end-day vulnerability right after Patch Tuesday. So it would be kind of foolish to assume that that's not what's happening with threat actors. And also, you know, patch times take on average 16 days, but that's kind of optimistic, right? You know, are you going to be able to defend against a threat actor that's kind of maybe medium level, even ransomware, that can develop an exploit in 24 hours and own you, not even having to pay that 0-day premium price tag? You know what I mean? So that was kind of the gist of the talk. And then we showed some specific kernel tradecraft techniques that were both observed in the wild that we have adopted, and then also ones that we have created for ourselves.
What's it like at X-Force? Like what's a day in the life there? What are you guys working on there?
It's amazing there. But at least for me, a day in the life, I get a lot of freedom to research, just to do research that has, it depends. So a lot of it will be time spending on code auditing and looking for vulnerabilities, or doing some end-day research, looking at particularly interesting vulnerabilities not found by me and trying to weaponize them, because we did talk about the patch gaps can be significant. And so a lot of the times, a lot of organizations, I work on the adversary simulation team. So we work on simulating the most sophisticated and advanced threat actors. And, you know, a lot of the times we're doing tests on organizations that don't patch day of, and it is really easy to turn around an end-day exploit, and use that. So it really depends. A lot of the time it's looking at weaponizing certain vulnerabilities. Some of the time it's creating new capabilities and post-exploitation work. And some of the times it's doing reverse engineering and vulnerability research. And sometimes it's like root cause analysis on some like malware samples, because X-Force and IBM are huge. So, and we all talk to each other. So anytime that I get to use, you know, the RE, VR, XDev, it could be any number of those things. And it's been amazing. My team is super amazing and supportive. And I feel really lucky to be in a full-time research role at such a big company where I'm so supported.
Is the goal to feed into like other services offered by IBM, or is the goal to sort of just make the world a safer place in terms of cybersecurity, or a mix of both?
I think a mix of both. I think my personal goal is to exercise and use my very niche skill set to have the most wide impact it can, and exist at a place that lets me do that. And so far, so good. In terms of X-Force, I think like the team that I'm on is a consulting team. So, you know, we're consultants. So the goal is to make the client happy and do as thorough of a test as they want us to do. And I think you know, they've been happy to have us there and my skill set to be able to emulate the most sophisticated threat actors, and having our research be at the front of the line, like doing cutting edge research, demonstrating that, you know, we really are legit and we're in this and we can, simulate the most sophisticated threat actors.
Yeah, that's cool. Like you're basically saying, like, this is the bar that we're setting, and this is the bar that we're setting for the Russian threat actors and the North Korean threat actors, and we're going to find the bug before them.
Yeah, exactly. Or we're going to kill the bug for them, which
yeah, yeah, that's better.
Speaking of the North Koreans and sophisticated threat actors, our friend Kim Jong-un has taken some interest in your work as well recently, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. That was really funny because a colleague of mine had asked me when that Google tag report came out if I had like recognized that account or anything, or like had some sort of interaction. And I was like, no, I don't think so. But my Twitter feed is really noisy, and it was like from months ago. And I think someone had like posted a Wayback Machine archive link of that account, the account that had been identified as being a North Korean threat actor, of like them posting their Twitter circle, and there I was like, oh, I guess that's me. Like, I hope they like my memes. And someone else made a joke being like, yeah, I think that was the only time that they got to look at memes because it was on the job. So
like, I'm glad I could entertain them.
yeah. I hope I made their day a little brighter.
Okay, so no shocker that we're gonna ask a slightly cloud related question because we are a cloud security podcast. But love to like hear what you think about which technologies vendors could be adopting that would make people's lives easier in terms of security, particularly in the cloud.
Yeah, I think particularly cloud, like the thing that really would be not just a cause for concern, but like an area that I would be particularly interested in is how virtualization technology, obviously, to like isolate different customers in multi-tenant environments. So you mentioned the research that I did with Firecracker. And the thing that I took away from that research was how aggressively Amazon made security a part of the design for Firecracker, because they knew that they were going to be running software or like servers from different clients on the same hardware, and that they needed to make sure that one client was as isolated as the other. And the thing that struck me as the most effective was making the hypervisor and hypervisor manager as stripped down from features as possible, so that it completely reduces the attack surface, for one. But also, like, of course, cloud providers are going to want to have a multi-tenant architecture because that's most efficient, that's most cost effective. And I think gravitating towards technology and emulation hypervisor virtualization technology that prioritizes security as point number one, instead of using technologies that have had to deal with security as like an afterthought. So that was like the main difference to me when doing that research, is that it was very apparent that they prioritized security and they had already thought about attack surface. If a vulnerability was found, mitigating the exploits, mitigating the effectiveness of exploits. And I'm not saying this like to like fangirl AWS or anything. It's just that that struck me differently than any other attack surface that I had audited before. And I don't claim to be like a super plugged into like cloud technology. That was kind of like my first foray in it. But if I were, provider, that's kind of what I would prioritize, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I think we're coming to the end of this time together. And one of the things we do at the end of our podcast, we call them the podaways, the takeaways from the episode. And if we can give you the honor of, if someone was listening and you wanted them to take away something from this conversation, what do you think are the few most important things that they should remember?
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess the feeding off the last point is that I think future advances in security, the most effective or impactful ones won't be the ones that are the most technologically impressive, but the ones that make it the most accessible and the easiest to be widespread and adapt. Did you ask me for 3?
3, but like go for it, whatever you want.
2, the best attack surfaces to examine are the ones that seem to be complex and also overlooked. And number 3, that the best music to hack to is hype bops.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much for joining us. We're like big fangirls of you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a lot of fun today.
We hope that Patch Tuesday goes well.
Thank you so much.
And if you ever do your own like Eras tour in the Middle East, then we'll get tickets for everybody.
I really do need to make it over there. It's going to happen soon. This year has been really chaotic for me. But I think next year I'll make it over there.
Maybe a honeymoon in
yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Well, that's all for this episode of Crying Out Cloud, presented by the cloud security company Wiz. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, and remember, unlike your IAM policies, more stars is better. And as always, if your cloud security strategy is making you cry, don't worry, just cry out cloud.